An investigation into a fatal shark attack takes a diver face to face with the killer. Was it an accident? Was it mistaken identity? Or was the shark actually hunting its victim? What will the investigation reveal about the massive great white stalking the waters off the California coast?
We have a fatal attack on a surfer.
He was essentially bit in half.
Boom, boom, boom.
Will the evidence help ID a prime suspect?
There's no way that shark's under 18 feet.
Reveal its MO?
It did appear to me that I was dealing with multiple bites.
And identify a brand new hunting ground for the great white?
We might be able to identify the exact shark that killed Thomas Butterfield.
For nearly a decade, shark researcher Ralph Collier and his assistant Brandon McMillan have investigated a series of brutal attacks off Central California. Now, after 9 years without a fatal attack in these waters, a predator has resurfaced. This time at nearby Morro Bay on Christmas Eve, 2021. Can Ralph and Brandon identify the killer before it strikes again and help save lives in this quiet seaside town? This is the Pit, just north of iconic Morro Rock. There have been several shark attacks here in the past, and plenty of terrifying near misses. This spot is known for great whites, but nothing like this has ever happened before.
A sad start to Christmas tonight. A young man was found dead.
Today, a man died of an apparent attack here in Morro Bay, north of the Pit Beach on State Park's property. First responders arrived on scene and declared the man dead on the beach. Beachgoers will not be allowed in the water. Some from the community are shocked that this incident happened close to home.
Thomas Butterfield, a bodyboarder, a brother, a son, tragically killed on Christmas Eve by what appears to have been a massive great white shark. Since the attack, a pall hangs over this town, leaving locals to wonder, why here and why now? Ralph begins his investigation with the harbor master, who was on the scene when the victim was recovered.
Has there ever been anything that even closely resembles what you saw here?
It's the first fatal shark attack we've had since I've been here.
The last fatal attack in Morro Bay was 1957 and claimed the life of a 25-year-old college student from Brooklyn, New York. Since then, 5 other victims survived shark bites in these waters. Thomas Butterfield wasn't so lucky.
Once we arrived on scene and realized what had occurred, we put a boat out on the water and got the rest of the people out of the water that were nearby. We closed the beach for 72 hours, and then we kept warning signs up for the following week because it was Christmas vacation time and a lot of people were around. It's something everybody thinks about when they go out in the water now.
There were no known witnesses to the Thomas Butterfield attack. No one to identify the shark or see how it happened. But there may be clues yet to be uncovered, which has led Brandon to Morro Bay. And this couple, Ralph and Brandon, will never know the truth. Ben and Rebecca Frimmer, who were in the water that day. What they saw still haunts them.
So take me back to Christmas Eve. I understand the conditions weren't that good that day, but you just had to go surfing anyway?
Yeah, no, they really weren't that good. It was windy and kind of nasty. So even though the conditions were kind of crappy, it was some time together, some time in the water, and we just figured we'd head out for just a little while.
In the rough conditions, the couple became separated. Rebecca decided to head in.
So you were paddling in and you saw a bodyboard sticking straight up with no rider. At that point, what did you think?
I was, hang on a second. As I was paddling in, I saw a board like floating on top of the water. So I figured I would just go pull it out so it didn't just become more trash in the ocean. I started pulling on the board. I could feel it was heavy. It wasn't really until I could like hop off my board and see what was going on that I realized that there was definitely a person there. As I started pulling the board in, that became apparent.
You pulled up on the leash, you made the discovery. Did you think right away it was a shark attack?
When I first found Tom, you know, he was floating on his stomach, and so I couldn't see like the excessive nature of the wounds on his chest until I pulled him in.
Seeing all the commotion on the beach, Rebecca's husband, Ben, swam back to shore to help.
You know, I've been a paramedic and combat medic, so I figured maybe I can help this guy or something. So we went over to kind of investigate and talk with the Harbor Patrol at that point, and it was pretty clear when I saw Tom that he had been long deceased. Maybe it hits harder just because you don't usually see humans being eaten, you know? Maybe it just hits home more because I'm a surfer and it's our greatest fear, maybe everybody's greatest fear, you know? It was a pretty sizable bite. I think Tom's death was instant. I don't even know if he knew what was happening. It looked like he was essentially almost bit in half. I mean, he must have bled out within seconds. I'm in awe of the shark, of their power. They're faster, they're bigger, they have much better senses than us. One bite, and that's it. I don't even think you get a warning. I think they go so fast, and they're so stealthy. They attack from like under. It's devastating what they can do.
Christmas Eve, Brandon, there were several internet cameras filming surfing conditions at Morro Bay.
Oh, really?
I've gone through hundreds of hours of video, and I have not been able to find Thomas anywhere.
So, are we at a dead end?
No, we've actually got some good forensic evidence. This is the bodyboard Thomas was riding when he was attacked.
No bites.
At first glance. But take a look at this.
Yeah, those are definitely teeth.
These are posterior teeth from the back of the lower jaw of a white shark. There's a tooth fragment embedded in the board.
Wow, look at that.
Look at this.
Wow.
White sharks often leave tooth fragments behind in cases like this.
So I guess we know what species this is.
Yes. This was a massive great white shark.
Okay, so how big?
One way to find out is to get a hold of Thomas Butterfield's wetsuit. There must be multiple bites in the wetsuit, and I could use that to determine the size of the shark down to a foot or two.
So if we know the size of the shark,
If we know the size of the shark that killed Thomas, and if it matches the size of a previously tagged shark by researchers off the California coast, we might be able to identify the exact shark that killed Thomas Butterfield.
The tragic shark attack at Morro Bay, California, has left this small coastal town in mourning. 42-year-old Thomas Butterfield, an experienced surfer, was killed by what's believed to be a massive great white. The first fatal attack off Morro Bay in over 60 years. The killing has reignited a decade-long investigation of great white attacks in this region, conducted by renowned shark researcher Ralph Collier and Brandon McMillan,
there it is.
who's been helping Ralph gather data in the field. Previously, they studied a series of attacks off Surf Beach, California, about 50 miles south of Morro Bay. Those attacks occurred with clockwork precision in October of even-numbered years. In 2008, 2010, 2012, and 2014, coinciding with the migration pattern of large female great whites.
Pulling him down. She's starting to fight now.
Now, the pattern seems to be shifting north, and Brandon is determined to find out why. Keith Poe has spent the last 28 years
Watch her, man. She will kill you. I'm not kidding you.
tagging over 5,000 sharks for researchers. For the past decade, he specialized in great whites. And lately,
We got it, man.
he's focused a lot of his tagging efforts in the waters off Point Conception to Morro Bay. This is a relatively new hotspot for great whites.
A few years ago, I understand you discovered a new white shark hotspot off Central California. Tell me about that.
Well, there were some attacks there, and we were interested in that.
We've got guys just got hit by a great white shark.
I was hearing things like the attacks on the kayaks up there.
Those are holes from a great white shark. Look at the size of that jaw.
So I thought there would be sharks up there.
Oh, she's coming around. Hang on. Here we go. There you go, Keith. There you go.
So I started working that area, and we found a lot of sharks up there.
Is there a certain time of the year that you personally would not go in the water near Morro Bay?
I see the most sharks in October and November, but they start coming in September, but they're here year-round. And they don't leave. So there's no time that's safe, but there are times that are a lot less dangerous.
Is Morro Bay a serial killer's new hunting ground? Back in San Luis Obispo, Ralph continues his investigation into the Thomas Butterfield case, questioning one of the first responders on the scene, William Miller, a detective with the coroner's office.
I believe you recovered a wetsuit.
Yeah, I had him transported in the wetsuit, and then I removed it during examination, and I retained it for further use.
Is it possible to take a look at that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Boom, boom, boom. You can see from here to here where the tooth entered, the insertion, and from here to here. Then this is the intermediate tooth. Multiple bites to this individual. It appears that there's a bite in the shoulder area, and of course, massive trauma to the abdomen. So this shark, when it was moving through the environment, saw this fuzzy outline, no definitive shape, thought it might be food, and a reflexive response. Went up, hit it, and continued to bite. And I think that's what happened here, and then just swam off. With your permission, Bill, I'd like to take this wetsuit back to my lab where I can do a more thorough examination of the bite impressions.
Yeah. Not only yes, but I think it's appropriate.
So, Ralph, I've been thinking a lot about where the bite marks are on the bodyboard and why the bite impressions are right here in the corner. He wasn't paddling, because if he was, the way the bite mark was on his body, there would be an impression right here.
That's correct.
What I really think is he was waiting for a wave. Now, bodyboarders will often sit on the bodyboard like this, which makes a perfect impression. The bite comes from this angle right here. His head was hit, half of his body this way. I really believe he was sitting like this on the board waiting for a wave as he got hit.
Interesting. That would explain the bites to the wetsuit. Speaking of which,
Oh my God. This is his wetsuit, huh?
yes. These are multiple bites from a very large shark.
So what kind of attack do you think this was?
It appears that the initial strike might have been predatory, but the additional bites might not have been predatory because there was no tissue removed.
So it seems like a lot of shark attacks is just a single bite, and the shark swims off. Clearly not this one.
No. But I was able to determine the size of the shark based on the distance between the teeth. These are individual insertion points of teeth, and measuring the distance between these individual tooth impressions will allow us to determine the size of the shark. This is a very accurate method for determining size.
Okay, so?
This white shark was 17 to 18 feet in length.
There can't be too many sharks out there this size.
No.
And that would definitely narrow down the list of suspects.
Yes.
Back in Morro Bay, a grieving family and dozens of friends mourned Thomas Butterfield on what would have been his 42nd birthday.
We grew up in Pittsburgh, California, right on the Delta, and we were always on the water. We were always together. Our mom growing up was a single parent, but going to nursing school. And I remember her telling a person that I was gonna go have an adventure, and I'm taking these two boys with me. And then moved to Ketchikan, Alaska, where we camped for 2 months. So our clothes smelled like campfire, and we walked into this new high school, and there's the two stinky Butterfield kids over there smelling like smoke. But our Alaska adventure was how we fell in love more and more with the ocean, just being in the water all the time. And when Tom wasn't surfing, he was snorkeling, spearfishing, doing everything ocean-related.
When the boys' mother settled in Morro Bay, Tom became a regular visitor.
He said, "Mom, I'm so glad you moved here." He enjoyed going out on the boogie board and getting out in the waves. I think it made him feel free. And every time he was out there, he went way out there, way out there. I would be wondering where in the world he was. And then eventually I would pick him out. Oh yeah, there's Tom.
As idyllic as Morro Bay might seem, the locals know what lurks just offshore.
I remember in July, he came back and he was, "Oh, I saw the biggest shark out there. I saw his dorsal fin. I knew it was a shark out there." And I remember asking, "Tom, did you get out of the water?" He said, "No, absolutely no, I didn't get out of the water. I know what I'm doing. I'm not gonna go towards it or anything." There's always notices on there. A shark was seen, the date, the time, and everything. That didn't deter Tom from anything. He loved it.
Little did he know, he was on a collision course with a mammoth predator. Tom and I were both coming down here to see our mom for Christmas Eve. And Tom, first thing was, "Oh, I can't wait to get back and get in the water." It looked good, and I remember him saying that. It looked good.
That morning, I said, "Tom, it was raining the night before. It's kind of not," he said, "That's the best time to go, Mom." So I can still see him walking out. And for the last 3 years, every time he came out to visit me off to the beach, he would go, and I would go with him. That one last time, I didn't go with him. Tom left, off he went to go ride the waves.
It was the last time Thomas's mom would see him alive.
Usually he takes a long time, but it was getting around 4 o'clock or something. I started calling his phone and no answer. And we drove where I thought he would be at, and all the parking was empty. And then they had a flashing light and said shark fatality. And I called his phone one more time. The detective answered it and told me about Tom. Tom was gone, so yeah, it was pretty crazy. We lived in shock for about 6 days. And living in shock is just indescribable. I mean, you have to tell yourself to breathe.
Right when that big shark took a bite of Tom, Tom became a spirit, and he turned around, embraced the shark, and said, "I forgive you," and he's off. He's off.
February 20th was his birthday. Our friends from Alaska all came down, and all our friends and family, tons of people from Morro Bay. Tom would have been so pumped to see that.
As part of the ceremony, Tom's ashes are cast into the ocean.
It was wonderful, amazing, all those people who came and had stories about Tom, and Tom's spirit was there.
I've always thought about my brother every single day of my life, and I'll continue to think about him.
Thomas Butterfield was the second fatal shark attack off California in 18 months. In that same period, there have been a dozen clashes between humans and great whites off the West Coast. Some experts speculate that a white shark population boom is behind the spike of attacks. Others contend that the population may have changed its migratory routes due to climate change. But one thing is certain. These predators are being seen more often and in more places than ever before. Eric Mayolander is a drone pilot based out of Santa Cruz, California. Today, he's taking his boat through one of the densest concentrations of great whites on the Pacific coast, a place known as Shark Park.
Drone deployed.
About 7 years ago, juvenile and subadult white sharks started showing up en masse to this protected cove, right off some of California's most popular beaches.
One flight, when I do the census counts, I counted over 30 within a mile area. It's not uncommon to see 20, but an average would be 7, 8, 9 sharks. Would be an average day. Of course, it's a concern to the people using the water, kayakers, stand-up paddleboarders, swimmers. Sheer numbers and how close they are to the shore and how close they are to people. They're actually sometimes in the surf. But typically they're in 18 to 25 feet of water. They're just doing their thing, swimming at the surface, not bothering anybody.
At least not on a regular basis. But there have been run-ins, including a fatal bite on a popular local surfer in May of 2020.
The day of the attack, I was here, and I filmed 15 white sharks.
At the center of Shark Park lies the wreckage of a 100-year-old cement ship. An ominous reminder that these waters can be deadly.
Since 2016, 2017, sort of well known, and there are actually people swimming out to the sharks, which definitely makes me nervous. People with inner tubes kicking their way out to where the sharks are. I wouldn't recommend that. The juveniles aren't typically going to bite something your size, but big ones do cruise through here. And you always need to be aware of that. In fact, larger sharks will cruise through hoping to eat one of these smaller sharks. We had a fatality in 2020. These are sharks, relatively well behaved. Again, I think most people are surprised in seeing how common they are in certain areas that there aren't more accidents and injuries.
Sean Van Summeren is a Santa Cruz-based shark naturalist who's documented the surge in sharks here.
I don't look at it as a population increase or explosion or a comeback necessarily, so much as the center of gravity is shifted north.
Juvenile great whites, which once grew up in the warm waters off Mexico, have moved north into the once chilly waters of Shark Park.
My estimation is that the sea conditions changed. You know, the currents have shifted, and when the conditions change, it becomes inviting, and the sharks will move in keeping with those conditions. It's a perfect scenario for a white shark rookery. So their food's here, they're safe, and they can relax. Sometimes they're belly full. We don't see a lot of feeding activity, and so I suspect that they come here to rest, digest their food, have a quick snack on some of these smaller sharks and rays. It's just a comfortable, inviting area for them with fewer predators and an abundance of easier to catch food. The juveniles have simply moved north into areas where they weren't previously seen. And so someone could say, oh, I've lived here for 10 years and I've never seen so many sharks. The population must be increasing. Locally, yes. But that doesn't indicate an overall population expansion or increase in abundance.
More great whites moving into the waters off popular beaches is now a fact of life for Californians. Ralph and Brandon believe a better awareness of what's happening here may save lives. And an understanding of the shark's behavior, especially where and when they like to hunt, is crucial for anyone who enters these waters. Just as in Morro Bay, where Thomas was killed, a new great white hotspot seems to be developing about 50 miles north of San Francisco at a place called Salmon Creek. On October 3rd, 2021, a 38-year-old surfer was bitten and held underwater for nearly 15 seconds. The 7th attack at this location. Is this the future of Morro Bay as well? Brandon has come to Salmon Creek to interview the victim.
So a few months ago, I understand you were hit by a white shark right here in these waters. Tell me what you remember about that day.
I was about 20 minutes into the session. The water was crystal clear and cold. And then, bam, something just hit me. And it dragged me under. I had no idea what it was. I thought for a minute maybe it was a boat hit me. You know, I'm underwater and feel this heavy pressure on my leg. I push as hard as I can, and nothing. It doesn't move. You know, I can't get away from it, and I start to kind of panic. What's holding me underwater?
So your leg was basically hanging off right here, and he just got you right the dead center.
Yeah, right behind my knee, and he came back and sandwiched me between the board, and that's what ended up saving my leg, was this backside of the board right here. I hit it once in the eye, but I was twisted because it had me and the board underwater. I hit it again, and then boom, it lets me up. I was under maybe about 15 seconds, I would say.
So what do you remember about this particular shark?
It was in no hurry, and it wasn't scared. It just took me and was gonna do whatever, you know, it felt like. And there was nothing I could do about it. I looked back at my leg and there's blood flowing out. It's just shredded. I started to paddle in, and first I thought, man, you're gonna lose your leg. And then I started to see spots. And I'm like, oh man, I'm not gonna make it in. And then luckily all these surfers that were in the water had heard me screaming. They came running over, and a couple of them tried to put a tourniquet on my leg with the leash. All these guys just started to carry me. You know, there's still blood everywhere, and then they just marched me up. And then they radioed in a helicopter. If I was alone, there's no way I would have made it.
Did you know before you paddled out that day there have been 6 shark attacks right at this spot?
I think a lot of the guys that surf up here enjoy the solitude and don't worry too much about the sharks. I mean, it happens, yeah, there's been 6 attacks, but we surf up here a lot and we stick together, and now definitely I don't surf alone. I surf with the community, so.
Yeah. So here's Eric Steinley's board.
That's a nasty bite.
Yeah, I got the impression that Salmon Creek was very sharky.
People refer to a lot of places as sharky, a lot of sightings, recurrent attacks over and over.
Yeah, I wonder why they only seem to hang off certain beaches.
We refer to those places as anchor points, locations where sharks have hunted their prey, where they've had success in the past, maybe. They keep returning to those locations over and over.
Sounds a little like the rogue shark, like the one from Jaws.
Yeah, the rogue shark theory has basically been debunked. However, there was a study that showed that some of the techniques utilized by white sharks are the same techniques utilized by human serial killers.
You mean like anchor points?
Yes. Here, read this publication. I think you'll be surprised.
This is amazing. Geographic profiling is a technique normally used by criminalists to identify a serial killer's home base based on the location of their crimes. Here, researchers use that same tool to study the hunting patterns of white sharks in South Africa. I've got to go check this out for myself.
In the wake of a fatal shark attack off Morro Bay, California, Brandon has traveled to South Africa to learn more about the killer's MO. Great white sharks aren't malicious, nor do they suffer from personality disorders. But research conducted in these very waters shows that they use many of the same strategies as human serial killers.
Hey, Brandon, how's it, buddy? Welcome to False Bay, home of the famous Seal Island.
Yeah, I've been wanting to come here for 20 years now.
20 years, that's a long time. Well, glad you made it.
So this is Seal Island. Right here in these waters, thousands of seals have been taken out by great whites. These predations were so predictable, researchers pretty much knew exactly where and when the shark would strike. So I read in a scientific paper that Sector 4 is a spot where you used to see the most white shark predations.
Yeah, Brandon, that is correct. Sector 4 is the hot spot for white sharks predating on seals. We call it the gauntlet, where seals leave the island to go offshore feeding, and they have to come back to the island via Sector 4. And that's where the sharks hang out waiting for the opportunity to strike at a seal passing by.
These are the same sharks over and over?
Most times, yes, the same sharks, especially the bigger ones.
If you pinpoint the exact location of previous attacks, you can accurately predict where a shark or a serial killer might attack next. So this is the spot, according to the research paper, where the white sharks hunt. Let's see what happens. Let me tow a decoy through here.
This used to be one of the most active anchor points on the planet. but not anymore.
We towed for 2 hours, and nothing. Something is just not right here.
So when's the last time you actually saw a white shark breach here?
June, July 2019. And what's crazy is that the seal's behavior has changed completely over the last 3 years.
White sharks have been gone so long, the seals have actually changed their behavior?
Absolutely. For us, it's crazy to see seals in areas where we would never see them roam before, but now they're hanging around that area knowing there's no white sharks around.
It turns out that the great white shark has a serial killer of its own to worry about. Stefan told me 2 orca called Port and Starboard started coming into False Bay a few years back. The shark population thinned out and finally just disappeared altogether. All evidence points to a killing spree by these 2 killer whales.
But there is one place left in South Africa where Brandon can observe great whites. Seal Rock in Mossel Bay. Here, the sharks gather at this tiny island in one small area to hunt seals. Brandon would go to that spot hoping to see an anchor point up close, to see for himself if great white sharks can be reliably found there. He'll do it at night, when the sharks are believed to be most active. The visibility is near zero, much the same as it was off Morro Bay when Thomas Butterfield was hit. But the sharks are definitely here. And they don't need to see their victims to hunt them. Mere minutes after Brandon enters the water, a large, bold animal is already locked onto him. It's like a phantom, disappearing in the murk, then reappearing when Brandon least expects it. Thomas Butterfield's last moments, it's likely he never saw the shark that hit him.
Great whites, they really do share a lot of the same characteristics as human serial killers. The only difference is, great whites, they kill to eat. Humans, they kill for some bizarre psychological reason. I think I'll take the sharks.
How was South Africa?
Amazing.
Glad he came back in one piece. But I've got some interesting information about the Thomas Butterfield case in Morro Bay.
Tell me.
So we determined the shark responsible was 17 to 18 feet long.
Right.
So I've been on the internet looking at an app put out by researchers tagging sharks in California.
Yeah.
So it turns out an 18-foot shark that was tagged 4 years ago is still transmitting.
4 years ago, she was measured at 17.5 feet. Today, she could have easily grown to 18 feet.
And according to the app, it's spending a lot of time hanging around off the California coast.
That could be the shark that attacked Thomas Butterfield. I mean, how many 18-footers are swimming around out there?
Precisely. And guess what this shark's name is?
No idea.
Poe Girl.
Poe Girl, as in Keith Poe, our shark tagger?
Yes.
Keith Poe first tagged this giant female with a satellite tracker in November of 2017. Off Point Conception.
So tell me about this fish. What was she like?
I put the bait out, she took it, and we fought her, and she fought like hell.
Forward, forward! And she's pulling hard, dude.
And she never showed fear. A lot of them show what I believe is fear, and she didn't have any fear in her at all. When I got her up here, and I secured her to the side of the boat, started putting the tag on her, she was working with me, she was going along with it.
God, can't even lift her, she's so heavy.
But once I pulled that tail rope off, she said, "That's it. I'm done with you. This is over." She started going crazy. And I took her off that cleat and removed her to the back cleat.
Hook's about to come out. She got it out, barely in her mouth. She quits biting it, she'll be able to go.
And then she got the hook out herself, but she was so aggressive.
There she goes. Yeah! Woo-hoo-hoo!
After you tagged her that day, have you seen her since?
3 months ago, I only got a few glimpses of her here at the side of the boat, but she looked even bigger to me. So there's no way that shark's under 18 feet, if not bigger.
The shark that bit Thomas Butterfield was in the 18-foot range. According to Keith, Poe Girl is also in the 18-foot range. Same shark? Who knows? I guess the big question is, where was Poe Girl last Christmas Eve?
Poe Girl? What do you think?
Well, she was tagged November 23rd, 2017, off Point Conception. She's been all over the Eastern Pacific. But get this, she did pass by Morro Bay on or about December 24th, 2021.
Christmas Eve. So, where is she now?
Well, she was last seen February 17th, 2022, heading offshore, somewhere out in the middle of the Pacific where these animals seem to aggregate.
You think she'll be back?
All the data points to that. This is a shark that is very comfortable in the waters off Morro Bay.
After more than a decade investigating shark attacks off the Central California coast, Ralph and Brandon may have finally identified the great white serial killer. The questions still remain. Has this predator found a new anchor point at Morro Bay? And will she be back to haunt these waters again? The answers may save lives in this quiet seaside town.